It's time for On the Farm in Alabama, bringing farmers and agribusiness the latest news from Alabama Extension and the Auburn University College of Agriculture. Now here's your host, Alabama Extension Regional Agent, Eddie McGriff.
Good day, everybody. I'd like to welcome you today to On the Farm in Alabama, and we're with Dr. David Russell. He is a weed scientist with Alabama Extension. And David, we're right up against corn planting. As soon as the weather breaks a little bit, I think we'll see a lot of corn growing ground. Later on, soybeans. We're going to be talking about weed control and the need for residual in both corn and soybeans. Two of our biggest weeds in both of them would be pigweed and morning glory. What can you recommend as far as residuals? Let's just start with corn.
Yeah, so thinking about corn, first of all, we want to make sure we've got a good burn down program ahead of that corn seed going into the ground, because corn being so sensitive to any competition, we want that ground as clean as possible to allow the best opportunity for that seedling to get up. In thinking about weeds that may germinate after corn emergence, we think about the grasses particularly, because taking grasses out of grasses is probably the most difficult part of at least my job. But in thinking about the morning glories and the other broadleafs later on in the season, atrazine is our backbone, right? So we've got the ability to put it out at planting and then come back with any early post application to get us through at least mid-season. And so atrazine being the backbone there, with any other burn down products like our glyphosate or any dicamba with applications with to catch those broadleaves is a really good option.
Well, there's two things I always tell growers. Is one is use the maximum rate of atrazine, which of the 4L product would be 2.5 quarts, maybe a quart at planting, then a quart and a half about 30 days after planting. I tell them 30 days rather than look at the weed size. They need to get in there timely, and once you space it out with 30 days with your second atrazine application, it's a pretty good program.
Yeah, it is. That early post follow-up, we typically have a contact or systemic herbicide that will catch anything that may already have been up and have germinated and growing, and then any other application like the atrazine or any of the group 27 products like mesotrione and timbotrione. Those tend to give us really good longer soil residual activity through the latter half of the growing season, specifically for those late germinating morning glory species.
When you come back with that post application about 30 days after planting, one thing I always try to mention to growers is that the atrazine, even though it is the backbone of our weed control program, a lot of times it doesn't give us season-long control. In other words, late in the season it starts to break down. Some of those morning glories will come up. So by adding another residual herbicide with it, and you talk about the active ingredients, I talk, there's a lot of different ones. I don't want to mention any ones in particular, but that, to me, I always tell growers, that's like a booster shot to kind of give it some extra residual to longer in the season.
Sure is. Yeah, and it's case by case dependent too. Producers know their field better than anybody else, and so they know based on the previous year if they're going to have a really tough morning glory population pressure, especially later on in the season. We know how difficult morning glory vines wrapping around mature corn, how difficult that could be to get that corn out and harvested. And so again, those chemistries like the ones we've already mentioned, the group 27s, are really good soil active material to kind of get us through at least canopy closure.
Yeah. We talked about corn. Now we're going to talk a little bit about soybeans, and it's good that we have those pre's. We don't have the atrazine in soybeans like we do corn, but we do have a lot of good products that we can use. Can you talk a little bit about the residuals in soybeans?
Yeah, sure. Again, it's best when we're discussing weed management to start off clean and try to stay clean, or at least apply these herbicides when weeds are small and actively growing. And again, that goes back to a good burn down program. But in addition to burning down what's emerged already, for soybeans, we can go to the S-metolachlor products like Dual, or the peroxysulfone products like Zidua. And then metribuzin is a good group 5 material that is often a very good additive to a lot of these tank mixtures to provide a little bit longer soil residual. So start off clean with a burn down plus any of those soil residual materials. Once soybeans are up, based on what the herbicide trait platform is, whether it be Enlist or Extend or any of our Roundup varieties, we have that option to go early post on those weeds with the addition of more soil residuals to get us through the end of that season.
Yeah, I know a lot of growers, they use Reflex or Reflex dual combination, but there's other combinations. And the Reflex will, of course, give you some active on the plants that are already up, but it also gives you some residual.
Yep, it does. And again, the metribuzin, we've often seen in our pre's, and when I say pre, I mean pre-emergent. We've often seen in our pre-emergent trials and our soil residual trials that two-way and three-way soil residual premixes, and that's just simply meaning 2 active ingredients or 3 active ingredients in combination are often much better than just a single active ingredient to get us through the end of that growing season for whatever it may be. I know it tends to be a little more costly, but those 2 and 3-way mixes just are added layers for additional weed control throughout the end of that season.
Yeah, and that's so important to get more than one mode of action out there. I see a lot of advertisements about new herbicides. We really haven't had a new mode of action in herbicides since the late 1980s. What they're really doing is combining 2 or 3 different herbicides together in a package, and that's what they're promoting as a new herbicide.
Yeah, just changing up the active combinations.
Yeah, but that's important because they have done research and testing on that, and you have some backup if something goes wrong. If you use established product, sometimes we want to, and there's nothing wrong with this, we want to go and mix these active ingredients ourselves, and maybe with generics be a little bit cheaper.
Yeah, it would, and a lot of these actives are so old that those original manufacturers no longer have the sole patent on those, and so a lot of the generic varieties have, or the generic products have come out, and those are viable options.
Well, I want to thank David for being with us today on the farm, and I want to just reemphasize to all growers, let's stay ahead of these weeds, and hopefully we'll have a clean crop when it comes harvest. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today, and appreciate David being with us.
Thank you.